The samurai of feudal Japan are often characterized as disciplined and honorable warriors, glorified as noble heroes in modern movies, stories, and art. But this idealized image hides the harsh truth of samurai warfare. In reality, samurai battles were marked by extreme violence, cruelty, and a ruthless approach that spared no one. This look into the darker side of samurai warfare uncovers a world of merciless fighting, psychological torment, and grim realities. To understand the true nature of samurai warfare, we must remove the romanticized image. The samurai were primarily warriors, and their combat methods were inherently brutal. The battlefield was chaotic, with the main goal being to kill or be killed. There was little room for mercy or compassion. In samurai warfare, the concept of taking prisoners was almost non-existent. To the samurai, surrender was dishonorable, both for the one surrendering and the one accepting the surrender. Battles were fought to the death, and those captured could expect little mercy. Prisoners were often executed brutally, serving as a stark warning to others. This practice extended beyond enemy combatants. Even women and children were not spared. In the ruthless logic of war, annihilating the enemy meant ensuring no potential threats remained. In the aftermath of a siege where the defenders have been overrun and the victorious samurai moved through a ruined castle, women and children, once safe behind the castle walls, now face the same fate as the warriors who defended them. The samurai, bound by their code and orders, show no mercy, their blades cutting down all in their path to ensure no threat remains. After a battle, samurai collected the heads of their fallen enemies as trophies. This gruesome practice was not only a way to count victories, but also served as a psychological weapon. Displaying the heads was meant to instill fear and demoralize enemies. Imagine being on the battlefield, surrounded by the cries of the wounded and the dying, with the smell of blood and sweat in the air. As the dust settles, the victors move among the dead and the dying, seeking out the severed heads of the enemy. The heads are carefully collected, washed, and perfumed, turning them into grim trophies of war. Living under the shadow of death was a constant reality for the samurai. Every battle brought the risk of injury or death, and the knowledge that failing to achieve victory could lead to disgrace or execution weighed heavily on their minds. The fear of dying a dishonorable death was a powerful motivator, driving many to acts of extreme bravery and brutality in the heat of battle. The samurai code of conduct, Bushido, demanded a level of mental and emotional strength that was difficult to maintain. Honor was paramount, and any failure to live up to the expectations of Bushido could result in a loss of status, disgrace, or even forced suicide, seppuku, that was practiced by samurai in feudal Japan as an honorable way to die, often to avoid disgrace or atone for failure. The ritual involved the samurai donning a white kimono and performing the act in a serene setting, typically with trusted witnesses present to ensure the dignity of the procedure. The samurai would use a short sword to make a deep, horizontal cut across the abdomen. A trusted friend or assistant, known as the kaishakunin, stood by to decapitate the samurai swiftly, minimizing prolonged suffering. This ritual was deeply rooted in the samurai code of Bushido, emphasizing loyalty, honor, and courage. The pressure to adhere to this strict code was immense, creating an environment where failure was not an option. This relentless pressure often led to a sense of isolation and a burden that was carried alone. Imagine the isolation of a samurai, sitting alone in a dimly lit room, contemplating the weight of his responsibilities, knowing that any misstep could lead to his disgrace or death. The pressure to perform, to uphold the honor of his family and his lord, is a constant presence, a burden that he must carry or die trying. Psychological warfare played a crucial role in samurai warfare. Samurai commanders would use various tactics to demoralize and break the spirit of their enemies. This included spreading false information, displaying the heads of captured soldiers, and launching surprise attacks to keep the enemy in a constant state of fear and anxiety. The constant state of fear and anxiety was especially present for those within a besieged castle, where failure to defend against an enemy's assault meant certain death. Siege warfare was a common aspect of samurai combat, and it brought its own unique horrors. Castles were the primary strongholds, and besieging them was a brutal and drawn-out process. Siege warfare often involved starvation, psychological warfare, and systematic destruction of the enemy's defenses. One of the most effective strategies in siege warfare was to cut off the supply lines of the besieged, leading to starvation and deprivation. This tactic aimed to weaken the defenders' resolve and force them to surrender. The sight of starving civilians, the cries of children suffering from hunger, and the desperation in the eyes of the defenders were common during sieges. Imagine the despair within the walls of a besieged castle, where food supplies have dwindled to nothing. The air is thick, and the smell of rot and decay, and the once proud defenders now lie weak and emaciated. Children cry out in hunger, their voices hoarse and frail, while their parents look on helplessly. The constant bombardment from the enemy outside serves as a cruel reminder of their inevitable fate. Desperation and hopelessness pervade the air, creating an atmosphere of utter despair. The Siege of Odawara in 1590 showcases the brutal nature of samurai warfare and the horrors of siege warfare. Led by Toyotomi Hideyoshi against the Hojo clan, this siege was one of the final major conflicts of the Sengoku period. It highlighted the merciless tactics employed by samurai armies to achieve their objectives. The Hojo clan held the fortress of Odawara, known for its strong defenses. Despite its strength, Hideyoshi's forces vastly outnumbered the defenders. He approached the siege with a blend of psychological warfare, strategic encirclement, and brutal intimidation. His goal was to break the Hojo's will to fight through starvation, fear, and relentless pressure. Hideyoshi's forces built a massive network of fortifications around the castle, effectively cutting off all supply routes. The Hojo were trapped, with no hope of reinforcement or resupply. As the siege dragged on, food supplies within Odawara dwindled. The defenders and the civilian population began to suffer from hunger and malnutrition. The sight of skeletal figures became common within the fortress walls. Hideyoshi employed psychological warfare to demoralize the defenders. He orchestrated grand displays of military might and spread rumors and false information within Odawara, creating an atmosphere of paranoia and mistrust. This tactic further isolated the Hojo and eroded their morale. After months of siege, Hideyoshi ordered a final assault on Odawara. His forces launched a coordinated attack on multiple fronts, overwhelming the defenders. The samurai within the fortress fought bravely, but the disparity in numbers and exhaustion made their resistance futile. In the aftermath of the siege, the Hojo leaders were forced to surrender. Thousands were executed, their heads collected as trophies and displayed to signify Hideyoshi's victory. This gruesome display of power was intended to send a clear message to any remaining opponents. Resistance would be met with merciless retribution. The Siege of Odawara highlights the brutal realities of samurai warfare. The romanticized image of noble warriors often overlooks the darker aspects of their existence. Behind the myth of the noble samurai lies a history of brutality and relentless warfare, where the line between honor and cruelty was often blurred. With that, our look into the brutal reality of samurai warfare comes to an end. Which part surprised you the most? Let us know in the comments below. Keep in touch for more such content. Until then, goodbye and take care.